You really want to know why we respect humans more than any other species we've encountered? Admiral Krathos clicked his mandibles in amusement, the bioluminescent patches on his carapace pulsing with a mix of blue and green. Sit down, young one. This is going to take a while. The junior diplomat, fresh out of the Galactic Academy of Xenorelations, settled onto her cushioning appendages. Her antenna twitched with barely contained excitement. Finally, a first-hand account from someone who'd been there during first contact. But first, Krathos continued, let me ask you something. What's the most terrifying creature you can imagine? Oh, that's easy, she chirped. A Mordanian deathstalker. Nothing survives their neurotoxin. The Admiral's mandibles clicked again, this time in what could only be described as the arthropodian equivalent of a snort. Child, humans eat creatures that produce neurotoxins, for fun. They call them pufferfish. It's a delicacy. What? That's not even the beginning. Let me tell you about my first assignment as a cultural attaché to Earth. It was supposed to be a simple observation mission. We'd finally decided to make official contact after monitoring them for decades, and my job was to compile a comprehensive report on human behavior and customs. You know, standard first contact protocol. Krathos's bioluminescence shifted to a contemplative purple. My first day on Earth, I witnessed something that made me question everything I thought I knew about sapient species. I saw a human child, barely old enough to operate their own locomotion systems properly, fall off something they called a skateboard. The small human's external protection layer was breached. There was red circulatory fluid everywhere. The junior diplomat's color patterns shifted to a horrified gray. How tragic. Was the spawn's life support compromised? That's the thing. Krathos leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. The small human laughed. It stood up, wiped away the red fluid, and said, and I quote, "That was awesome. Did you see how high I got before I wiped out?" Impossible. Surely their pain receptors. Oh, they have pain receptors. Quite sensitive ones, actually. They just choose to ignore them sometimes, for fun. The Admiral's color pattern swirled with remembered bewilderment. But that's not even the most bizarre part. The adult humans supervising this activity? They smiled, helped the child up, and said, "Next time, bend your knees more when you land." The junior diplomat's recording appendages were working overtime, trying to capture every detail. They encourage their young to repeat potentially harmful activities? They call it learning from experience. And that's just the tip of the frozen water formation, as humans would say. Did you know they intentionally jump out of perfectly functional atmospheric vehicles? For recreation? No. Yes. With fabric devices they call parachutes that sometimes malfunction. And when they do malfunction, do you know what humans do? Cease the clearly dangerous activity? Krathos's bioluminescence flickered with what might have been amusement. They pack another parachute and jump again. They have a saying, "Get back on the horse." It's a reference to another dangerous activity where they balance on top of large, powerful creatures for transportation and sport. But why? That, young one, is the question that drove our entire xenopsychology department to the brink of collective mental breakdown. The answer, as far as we can tell, is simply because they can. Because humans look at the impossible, the dangerous, the absolutely inadvisable, and think, I bet I could do that. The Admiral shifted in his seat, his patterns now showing a complex mix of respect and residual confusion. Let me tell you about something humans call hot sauce competitions. I'm afraid to ask, but what are those? Humans intentionally cultivate plants that produce chemical compounds designed to cause pain. Then they concentrate these compounds, make them more potent, and willingly consume them while competing to see who can endure the most pain without showing distress. That's torture. That's Tuesday night at a place called Buffalo Wild Wings. But here's the truly fascinating part. Humans don't do these things because they're stupid. Quite the contrary. They're remarkably intelligent. They knew exactly what they were doing when they looked at a plant that evolved specifically to prevent being eaten and thought, this would go great on tacos. The junior diplomat's patterns had settled into a confused yellow-green. Junior. But surely this behavior isn't universal among their species. Oh no. Some humans are perfectly reasonable, risk-averse individuals who would never engage in such activities. But here's the thing. Even those humans have what they call a bucket list. It's a list of potentially dangerous or challenging activities they want to try before their biological functions cease. Even their most cautious members harbor secret desires to do something incredibly inadvisable at least once in their lives. Cathax's patterns shifted to a deep blue of remembrance. I once knew a human mathematician, completely logical being, spent most of his time working on theoretical physics problems. One day he announced he was going to try something called surfing. What's surfing? It's when humans stand on a piece of shaped material and ride on top of massive waves in bodies of water that contain numerous predatory species. When I pointed out the statistical improbability of survival, do you know what he said? What? That's what makes it exciting. Then he laughed. They do that a lot, especially when discussing potentially fatal activities. The junior diplomat's recording appendages had stopped moving, frozen in disbelief. How did they become the dominant species on their planet? That's exactly why they did. Humans don't just survive. They actively seek out challenges. When faced with an obstacle, their first instinct isn't to find a way around it. No, they look at it and think, I wonder what would happen if I poked it. Their entire scientific method is essentially formalized poking of things that probably shouldn't be poked. Cathax's patterns rippled with a mix of admiration and residual terror. Did you know they went to their planet's moon before they had fully functioning atmospheric vehicles? They basically strapped themselves to a controlled explosion and pointed it at the sky. The mathematical probability of success was so low it made our probability theorists weep. But they did it anyway. Why? Because it was there. Surely after such a dangerous achievement they immediately started planning how to go even further. Their current goals include establishing permanent settlements on a completely inhospitable planet they call Mars. When asked why, one of their leading scientists simply said, because it would be cool. The junior diplomat's patterns had shifted to a shade that indicated deep thought. But what about their military capabilities? Surely such unpredictable behavior makes them dangerous. Cathax's bioluminescence dimmed slightly. That's the thing about humans. They're not inherently aggressive, they're just intensely curious and surprisingly resilient. Yes, they have impressive military capabilities, but not because they particularly want to fight. They developed them because they looked at the concept of interstellar war and thought, better be prepared, just in case. But we've seen their entertainment broadcasts. They seem obsessed with conflict. Ah, yes. Their movies and video games. Another fascinating aspect of human psychology. They create simulated scenarios of their worst fears and then engage with them for entertainment. It's like they're continuously running threat assessment scenarios, but making them fun somehow. The Admiral's patterns shifted to a thoughtful azure. But here's why we really respect them. Humans have this remarkable ability to be simultaneously terrifying and endearing. They'll risk their lives to save members of completely different species. They'll adopt predators as pets and somehow convince these creatures to be gentle with their young. They'll look at the most dangerous thing in their environment and try to make friends with it. Make friends with it? Oh yes, there's documented cases of humans befriending everything from enormous marine mammals to microscopic organisms they use to make food. They have this bizarre ability to form social bonds with literally anything. One of their scientists spent years living with primates just to understand them better. Another lived among wolves. They don't just study things, they try to become friends with them. The junior diplomat's patterns had shifted to a mix of fascination and disbelief. But why do we trust them with galactic security responsibilities? Surely their unpredictable nature makes them unsuitable for such crucial roles. Cathax's bioluminescence brightened. Actually, that's exactly why they're perfect for it. Humans are surprisingly good at maintaining peace precisely because everyone knows they're capable of doing absolutely insane things if provoked. No species wants to find out what humans might do if they're really pushed. But more importantly, humans have this remarkable ability to think outside of traditional parameters. For example? Well, there was this incident with the Xenobiology Empire. They were threatening to invade a developing world, had their entire fleet in position. Every other species was preparing for war. But the humans, they sent one diplomat who challenged the Xenobiology Emperor to something called poker. Somehow turned the whole thing into a gambling event. The invasion fleet ended up leaving with signed trade agreements and something called Hawaiian shirts. The junior diplomat's patterns flickered rapidly. They prevented war with games and clothing? Humans have a saying, work smarter, not harder. Though they often follow this up with incredibly hard work anyway, just to cover all bases. They're wonderfully contradictory like that. Cathax's patterns shifted to a warm gold. But do you want to know the real reason we respect humans more than any other species? Yes! Because despite everything, their bizarre risk-taking behavior, their seemingly illogical decisions, their constant need to push boundaries, they remain fundamentally kind. They'll risk their lives not just for their own species, but for any species they consider friends. And they consider a lot of species friends. The Admiral's patterns pulsed with finality. We respect humans because they make the galaxy a more interesting place. Yes, they're terrifying. Yes, they do things that make no logical sense. But they also create beautiful art, make groundbreaking scientific discoveries while trying to answer questions like, what if we did this obviously dangerous thing, and somehow managed to be both the most and least predictable species we've ever encountered? And they're okay with us studying them like this? Oh, they love it. They're constantly studying themselves too. They have entire academic fields dedicated to figuring out why they do the things they do. Sometimes they even study why they study themselves. It's wonderfully recursive. The junior diplomat's patterns had settled into an impressed Violet. I think I understand now why my professors spent so much time on human psychology. No, you don't. Cathax clicked his mandibles in amusement. Nobody understands human psychology, not even humans. And that's exactly why they're so fascinating. Just when you think you've figured them out, they'll do something like, well, like deciding to domesticate one of the most dangerous predators on their planet, because it was, and I quote, fluffy and cute. They what? Oh yes, wait until you learn about cats. But that's a story for another time. The Admiral's patterns shifted to a professional blue. Now do you understand why we respect humans? The junior diplomat's patterns cycled through several colors before settling on a determined green. Because they're unpredictable yet reliable, dangerous yet kind, logical yet completely insane? Exactly. And because no matter how many times we tell them something is impossible, they'll not only try to do it anyway, but probably succeed through some method that completely ignores conventional physics. It's better to have them as allies than try to figure out what they might do if we weren't friends. That's actually terrifying. Welcome to galactic diplomacy, young one. First rule. Never tell a human something is impossible. They take it as a personal challenge. Second rule. If a human says, watch this, either record it for posterity or run. There is no middle ground. The junior diplomat's patterns showed a mix of anticipation and anxiety. I think I'm going to enjoy this assignment. Oh, you definitely will. Just remember, if a human offers you something called ghost peppers, politely decline. Some experiments in cross-species cultural exchange are best left untried. As the junior diplomat left the Admiral's office, her patterns still swirling with all she'd learned, Cathax noticed a message on his communication device. A human delegation was requesting permission to attempt something called a space rodeo. He didn't even bother asking for details before approving it. Some questions were better left unasked, and if there was one thing he'd learned about humans, it was that they'd probably succeed. If not in the way they intended, then in some other, even more improbable way. Besides, he had to admit, he was curious to see what they'd come up with this time. That was another thing about humans. Their madness was surprisingly contagious. The junior diplomat hadn't made it halfway down the crystalline corridor when Admiral Cathax's voice echoed after her. Actually, you might want to come back in. The space rodeo delegation is here early. Her pattern shifted rapidly between curiosity and professional composure as she re-entered the office. Standing, or rather, bouncing, in the center of the room was a human in what her cultural database identified as Western wear, complete with something called a 10-gallon hat that definitely didn't look like it could hold 10 gallons of anything. Howdy, y'all! The human's enthusiasm made the universal translator struggle to maintain proper volume control. I'm Dr. Madison O'Reilly, astrophysicist and professional bull rider. We're here to propose something amazing. Cathax's patterns flickered in what the junior diplomat was beginning to recognize as his "here we go again" signal. Please, Dr. O'Reilly, enlighten us. So, you know how zero gravity makes everything more interesting? The human's eyes sparkled with what most species had learned to recognize as the dangerous kind of creativity. Well, we were thinking, what if we combined traditional rodeo with space station design? The junior diplomat's patterns shifted to confused yellow. You want to put large Earth bovines on a space station? No, much better. Dr. O'Reilly pulled out a holographic projector. We want to build a specialized ring station that spins to create artificial gravity, but, and here's the genius part, we can vary the spin rate to create different gravity levels. Imagine riding a mechanical bull that's not just bucking, but dealing with constantly shifting gravitational forces. Kathax's mandibles clicked in what might have been resignation or amusement. And the purpose of this would be? Training. Think about it. We're expanding into space, right? Different planets have different gravity. What better way to prepare colonists and space workers for variable gravity conditions than to make it into a sport? Plus, it'll be fun. The junior diplomat watched in fascination as her superior's patterns cycled through at least 7 different colors before settling on a bemused blue-green. Dr. O'Reilly, are you suggesting we build a multi-billion credit space station for entertainment? Entertainment and education, the human beamed. We've already got several universities interested in studying the physiological effects. The military wants to use it for adaptation training. And get this, the Centaurian Tourism Board wants to sponsor it. The Centaurians? The junior diplomat couldn't help but interrupt. The species that gets motion sickness from walking too quickly? Exactly. They want to watch from the observation deck. Apparently they've got a whole betting pool going about how long different species can last on the ride. They say watching other species do crazy things so they don't have to is their favorite form of entertainment. Kathax's patterns showed resignation. And I suppose you've already got the engineering specs worked out? Better than that. Dr. O'Reilly's grin widened as she pulled out another hologram. We've got a prototype. Well, sort of. We've been testing the concept in the orbital shipyard's maintenance ring. Turns out the artificial gravity generators can be programmed to create some really interesting effects. We call it the Space Bronco. The hologram showed a human strapped to what looked like a traditional mechanical bull, except this one was surrounded by a complex array of gravity generators. As they watched, the test rider was subjected to what appeared to be rapidly shifting gravitational forces, while the bull bucked and spun. Is that safe? The junior diplomat's patterns had shifted to concerned purple. Oh, mostly. We've only had 3 minor concussions and 1 case of someone laughing so hard they pulled a muscle. Much safer than traditional bull riding. Plus, we've got medical teams standing by, and the AI safety system is top-notch. It was designed by a rodeo clown with a PhD in robotics. Kathax's patterns flickered. A what with a what? Oh, right, sorry. Earth cultural context. Rodeo clowns are actually highly trained professionals who protect riders from injured or angry bulls. This particular one decided to get her doctorate in robotics after an incident with a mechanical bull and a faulty control system. Said if she was going to get thrown across a room by a machine, she wanted to understand exactly why it was trying to kill her. The junior diplomat's recording appendages were working overtime again. Your species responds to near-death experiences by studying them? Well, yeah! How else are you going to make them safer and more fun? Anyway, the Space Bronco is just phase 1. Wait until you hear about our plans for zero-G barrel racing. Kathax's patterns shifted to what the junior diplomat was starting to recognize as his might as well embrace the chaos color. Dr. O'Reilly, just out of curiosity, how many of your degrees were earned because something dangerous made you want to understand it better? The human appeared to count on her fingers for a moment. Let's see. The astrophysics degree was because I saw a documentary about black holes and thought, cool, space whirlpools. The mechanical engineering degree was after that incident with the bucking bronco that sent me through a fence. Figured I should learn how they work from the inside out. The xenobiology focus came after I tried to ride a Martian sandstrider, and discovered their spine structure makes Earth riding techniques completely useless. Oh, and I'm currently working on a degree in xenophysics because I want to understand how different atmospheric pressures might affect the bull riding experience on other planets. The junior diplomat's patterns had frozen in a sort of fascinated horror. You pursue advanced education because of accidents? Not accidents. Opportunities. Every time something goes wrong, it's a chance to learn something new. Like, did you know that Martian sandstriders have a completely different center of gravity than Earth horses? Totally changed my approach to extraterrestrial equestrian theory. Kathax's patterns showed a mix of respect and concern. And this space rodeo project? You've considered all the safety implications? Absolutely. We've got backup systems for our backup systems. Every rider will be wearing a suit equipped with personal gravity compensators, emergency thrusters, and this is really cool, A biomonitor that can detect if they're having too much fun and need to take a break. Too much fun? Yeah. Turns out humans can get so excited about doing dangerous things that they forget about minor details like eating or sleeping. The suits monitor adrenaline levels and can automatically disable themselves if the rider's been going too long. We call it the party pooper protocol. The Admiral's patterns shifted to resigned acceptance. And I suppose you'll want to start construction immediately? Well, we've already got the preliminary framework assembled in the shipyard. We might have gotten a little excited and started before getting official approval. But hey, easier to ask forgiveness than permission, right? The junior diplomat watched in amazement as her superior's patterns cycled through what appeared to be every possible color combination before settling on an amused turquoise. Dr. O'Reilly, has anyone ever told you that your species' approach to project management is unique? Oh, all the time. But think about it. If we waited for every possible approval and safety check, we'd never get anything done. Sometimes you just have to strap yourself to a prototype and yell yee-haw for the sake of science. Krathos turned to the junior diplomat. And this, young one, is why we respect humans. They don't just push boundaries. They lasso them, ride them like a bucking bronco, and somehow turn the whole thing into a patentable innovation with educational applications. Dr. O'Reilly beamed. So, is that a yes on the space rodeo? Would saying no actually stop you? Probably not. We'd just have to get more creative about the paperwork. Maybe reclassify it as a gravitational adaptation research facility with optional recreational applications. The Admiral's patterns showed something between amusement and surrender. The funding is approved, Dr. O'Reilly. Just try to keep the number of emergency medical evacuations to a minimum. No promises, but we'll do our best. Now, who wants to be the first non-human test rider? We've got a betting pool going on which species will set the record for longest ride. As the junior diplomat watched her superior's patterns shift to alarmed indigo, she realized something important. Humans didn't just make the galaxy more interesting. They made it more fun. Terrifying, yes, but definitely more fun. And somehow, probably by accident, or opportunity, as they'd call it, they'd managed to turn their own reckless nature into a form of diplomacy. After all, what better way to unite different species than by giving them something amazing and slightly dangerous to watch humans do? She made a mental note to update her report. Humans, the species that turned "hold my beer and watch this" into an interstellar cultural exchange program. The only question was, how long until someone let them organize the Galactic Olympics? Based on Dr. O'Reilly's expression, that proposal was probably already in the works. Just as Admiral Krathos was about to politely decline being the first non-human test rider, his office door chimed again. This time, a delegation of Zentari physicists floated in, or rather tried to float in. They seemed to be having trouble with their anti-gravity units. Sorry for the interruption, the lead Zentari whistled through their breathing tubes. But we couldn't help but overhear something about variable gravity experimentation and, well, their bioluminescent tendrils pulsed with excitement. We have some concerns and suggestions. Mostly suggestions. Dr. O'Reilly's eyes lit up. Ooh, the gravity wave specialists. Perfect timing. I was hoping to talk to you about incorporating quantum fluctuation patterns into the ride sequence. The junior diplomat watched as her universal translator struggled to keep up with the rapid exchange of technical jargon between the human and the Zentari. Something about gravitational harmonics and relativistic rodeo resonance. Krathos's patterns shifted to alarmed magenta. Please tell me you're not suggesting what I think you're suggesting. If you think we're suggesting using quantum entanglement to create synchronized bull riding across multiple points in space-time, one of the Zentari trilled, then yes, that's exactly what we're suggesting. Think about it! Dr. O'Reilly was practically bouncing. We could have simultaneous competitions across different star systems. The quantum entanglement would eliminate light speed delay in scoring. We could even incorporate temporal loops to let riders compete against their own previous runs. The junior diplomat's patterns shifted to pure white, the xenobiological equivalent of a blank stare. Is that even possible? Oh, probably not. Dr. O'Reilly waved dismissively. But that's what they said about faster-than-light travel, and look how that turned out. All it took was one human looking at a coffee stain on their physics homework and thinking, hey, that looks like a space-time fold. The lead Zentari's tendrils wrapped around their datapad excitedly. We've already started running simulations. There's only a 12% chance of creating a localized time paradox, and even then, it would probably just result in some riders having to compete against infinite versions of themselves. That's better odds than my first rodeo. Dr. O'Reilly turned to Krathos. See, we're being super careful about safety. The Admiral's patterns had settled into what might have been resignation or the early stages of a migraine. Dr. O'Reilly, when I approved funding for a space rodeo, I was not expecting it to involve quantum physics. Everything involves quantum physics if you look at it small enough. Besides, the Centauri team has some amazing ideas about using quantum entanglement for the scoring system. And wait until you hear their proposal for incorporating dark matter into the arena design. One of the Centauri scientists waved their tendrils enthusiastically. We think we can use dark matter interactions to create what we're calling ghost riders. Quantum probability shadows of all possible ride outcomes happening simultaneously. Isn't that dangerous? The junior diplomat couldn't help but ask. Define dangerous. Dr. O'Reilly grinned. I mean, technically, everything we do could destroy the fabric of space-time. That's what makes it exciting. But don't worry, we've got safety protocols. The quantum containment field can only collapse if someone manages to ride longer than the theoretical maximum time limit. And how long is that? In normal space-time? About 8 seconds. But once you factor in the temporal loops and quantum probability states... Dr. O'Reilly pulled out a calculator. Somewhere between negative infinity and the heat death of the universe. We're still working out the exact math. The Centauri scientists' tendrils twisted in what might have been their version of enthusiasm. The really interesting part is what happens if someone manages to ride through a complete quantum probability cycle. Theoretically, they could end up winning every possible version of the competition simultaneously. Krathos's patterns had shifted to a color the junior diplomat had never seen before. And humans want to do this? Deliberately? Want to? Half the human scientific community is already fighting over who gets to be first. Dr. O'Reilly pulled up another hologram, this one showing a waiting list. We've got physicists, astronomers, rodeo champions, and at least 3 philosophers who want to see if quantum bull riding has any implications for free will theory. The junior diplomat's recording appendages had given up trying to make sense of it all. How do philosophers factor into this? Well, if you're simultaneously riding and not riding a quantum bull across multiple timelines, it raises some interesting questions about the nature of consciousness and reality. Plus, they're really interested in whether the bull itself develops quantum consciousness during the ride. We've got a whole research team dedicated to quantum bovine psychology. One of the Centauri scientists raised a tendril. We've actually had to add a philosophical ethics review board to the project. Apparently, there are some concerns about the metaphysical implications of quantum rodeo injuries. But don't worry, Dr. O'Reilly added quickly, seeing Krathos's patterns shift to concerned ultraviolet. Any injuries would theoretically only exist in quantum superposition until observed. We're calling it Schrödinger's concussion. The Admiral's patterns stabilized into what appeared to be acceptance of the inevitable. Dr. O'Reilly, when you first proposed this project, did you intend for it to become a quantum physics experiment? Honestly, I just wanted to ride bulls in space. Everything else just kind of happened. That's the great thing about humans. We start with, wouldn't it be cool if, and end up revolutionizing our understanding of the universe? Did you know we discovered 3 new quantum particles while trying to figure out why the cotton candy machine in the research facility's break room was affecting the gravity sensors? The Centauri scientists' tendrils curled in excitement. We've already submitted 17 papers to the Galactic Physics Journal based just on the preliminary tests. And that's not even counting the breakthrough in quantum refreshment technology from the cotton candy incident. The junior diplomat's patterns shifted to curious green. Quantum refreshment technology? Oh yeah, Dr. O'Reilly beamed. Turns out, if you spin sugar strands fast enough in a variable gravity field while quantum entanglement is occurring nearby, you can create candy that exists in multiple flavor states simultaneously. We're calling it quantum candy. The Galactic Patent Office is still trying to figure out how to classify it. Krathos's patterns showed a mix of fascination and dread. And this discovery was... accidental? Most of our best discoveries are accidents. Well, we prefer to call them unplanned research opportunities. Like that time we accidentally created a micro black hole while trying to make the perfect cup of coffee in zero gravity. Did you know that extreme caffeine concentrations can affect local space-time curvature? The junior diplomat made a note. Humans turn snack food into quantum physics experiments. Update xenobiology threat assessment accordingly. One of the Centauri scientists waved their datapad excitedly. We've just received the latest simulation results. If we incorporate the quantum candy technology into the rodeo scoring system, we might be able to create a quantum refreshment stand where every snack exists in a superposition of all possible flavors until purchased. Now that's what I call concession stand innovation. Dr. O'Reilly turned to Krathos. So, about that authorization for the quantum physics upgrade to the space rodeo. The Admiral's patterns had settled into what could only be described as, might as well embrace the quantum chaos. Document everything. And please, try to keep the number of timelines you create to a manageable level. The paperwork for quantum paradox resolution is already a nightmare. No promises about the timelines, but we'll do our best to keep them organized. Now, who wants to try some quantum candy while we go over the plans for the dark matter rodeo clown training program? As the junior diplomat watched the Zentari scientists cluster around a bag of shimmering, probability-defying cotton candy, she realized she needed to update her report again. Humans, the species that doesn't just push the boundaries of science and reason, but somehow manages to turn those boundaries into a snack food that violates the laws of physics. She couldn't help but wonder what they'd come up with next. Although, given the quantum nature of the project, they'd probably already come up with it in some timeline or another. Somewhere in the multiverse, a quantum bull rider was probably already winning every possible competition simultaneously, while enjoying every possible flavor of cotton candy that ever existed or would exist. And somehow, that seemed perfectly normal for a species that had turned hold my beer into a legitimate scientific methodology.